to think about the architecture you don't see, to think about what you have done, what you are doing, and what you will do in the future concerning architecture. Because I think it's essential that as architects, we break the paradigm of architecture and change how we think about and make architecture, so that we also alter how people experience and, most importantly, understand architecture. And because of that breaking the paradigm, that was partially why I wanted to break the paradigm of these lectures. Try at least something else. Anything that's been done for 48 years deserves to be looked at again. Maybe not changed, but at least looked at. We must increase and diversify the audience for architecture. And most importantly, reconnect with people. Physically, intellectually, and absolutely with emotionally. A survey conducted by the Roper organization and sponsored by the AIA some years ago found that architects are considered professional but very elitist. And I forgot my slides yet. So I gotta find them. No, I found it. Okay. Good. Now this is, I think most of you know, this is Philip Johnson. And Philip Johnson was a premier elitist. But at the same time, he introduced the world of postmodernism, which connected with a lot of people also. But the suit and who he is, he fits the picture. Actually, architecture has been anti-popular and elitist since it lost its desire and ability to communicate with the public. This occurred early last century when architecture and the other arts began to reflect an anti-popular concept of the world, which reflected this idea and disparaged and marginalized the masses. In dehumanization of art, by the way, these slides, the art slides, and there are almost as many of those as architecture, the title and the artists are on the screen. In Dehumanization of Art, Ortega y Gasset stated an essential function of modern art is to divide the public into two classes: those who understand it and those who cannot. Not those who do not, mind you, but those who cannot. Ortega also noted that modern arts are not so much unpopular as they are anti-popular. You also see this attitude in Nietzsche, D.H. Lawrence, T.S. Eliot, and many others that were working at that time. The marginalization of the masses is a process which certain people and ideas appear to be privileged over others. What is this term mass? Its goal was to deprive people of features that would make each individual distinctive and instead to create a blur, a mass that would allow the users of the term to feel superior. So what caused this anti-popular, anti-mass attitude? It was the horror of sheer numbers. From 1200 to 1800, the population of the Western world was almost constant. But in the 100+ years after 1800, the population almost tripled. As a defense against the rise of these masses to social power, the concept of the mass man arose. This anti-popular point of view is clear in E.M. Forster's novel, Howard's End, which was made into a popular film. The film traces the story of a working man, Leonard Bast, seen on the left here, as he rises out of the uncultured masses by educating himself. In the film's ending, Leonard is assaulted by another character, and he begins to fall. For support, he grabs onto a bookcase, and ironically, the bookcase falls on top of him and kills him. So his attempt to attain culture literally proves fatal. This elitist attitude has continued to influence how architecture is thought about, produced, and even taught. Anti-popularism is particularly destructive for architecture, since architecture is the most public of the arts. This elitism has caused architecture to be mostly removed from the public. To reverse these effects, architecture must find and identify its audience, which is the public. But what is the public? The root meaning of public is common possession by all the people. Public is that which reflects and emanates from the people. Today, ethnic, racial, religious, economic, political differences separate us and make our life experiences very different. To transcend these differences, we need an inclusive language that reaches the public, a public that is characterized not only by pluralism, but also by a lack of consensus imagery or common symbols. Architecture, I believe, is a public art, and a public art therefore demands a means to communicate with all of the people, not just some, but all of the people. Connecting with people and having people become involved with architecture is similar in a way to what Andy Warhol achieved in art through his use of conventional, recognizable elements. In the concept that the anti-populist constructed, canned food was a symbol of the masses because it was mechanically produced and was a homogenized mass product. When Warhol displayed his soup cans as art, it immediately became controversial. Here was a denigrated mass icon being called art. Warhol showed that it was suddenly impossible to tell the difference between art and non-art, between art and real things, only by looking. The real differences were invisible. These Brillo boxes caused Arthur Danto to say in Transfiguration of the Commonplace that these Brillo boxes might be the end of art. Warhol's instantly recognizable images definitely communicated. Viewers didn't have to ask, what the hell is it? Instead, the question becomes, what does it mean? Warhol's art concerns content rather than image, material, or form alone. The best known example of shock in art is Marcel Duchamp's Fountain. Oops, sorry. I'm going the wrong way. It's dark here. This is obviously a urinal. Its shock effect was in Duchamp's ability to displace the common image of plumbing's ordinary utilitarian use. He literally turns it upside down and puts it where it was never intended to be, in a place no longer hidden from the half of the population that doesn't stand up in the John. Fountain and its place in art continue to evolve because it still befuddles and generates ideas. This piece, Fountain, literally sent reality itself reeling. The word private, when traced to its Latin root, means latrine. So fountain is therefore an object taken from the private and thrust into public space. But what is public space? Vito Acconci gave us the simplest of answers. Public space is leaving home. Warhol and Duchamp are gone, but I continue to see both of them as examples, not of what to do and not somebody to copy, but rather to be looked at as successful communicators who engage people's imagination. Duchamp, then Warhol, nullified the traditional view of art so that art could be looked at for what it was and what it wasn't. Architecture, unfortunately, has not experienced this same purifying kind of nullification. A pertinent example of experience that reinforces a sense of surprise, defamiliarization, or shock. If architecture is to connect with people, it too should be more about finding the unfamiliar in the familiar. Too much architecture is understood by the few, so that we must again create architecture that reaches the many. This is a project that we've had a model in the back of the show that is still alive, waiting for a tenant. This is a shot of the pool of the YMCA we did several years ago. The most important influences on me personally have been the effect of the senses on experience and then on architecture. It resulted from a very jarring experience I had soon after I finished college. One evening I was driving home from work in my TR4, which is a small sports car, very small actually. Tanker truck changed lanes at a stoplight and crashed into my car. Since the driver couldn't see me because he was way up here and I was way down there, the truck dragged my car and me for over 125 yards. Even though I was constantly honking the horn,